championship week, and here at the Big Mountain, we're going to provide a preview of the Pac-12 Championship Game.
We have a great weekend of conference championship games coming up. So we're back on the Big Mountain, where we bring you a detailed focus on the Big Ten, the Mountain West, and a little bit of the Pac-12.
All right, Steve, we've got the Pac-12 Championship Game here. The Huskies and the Ducks, the rematch we all were hoping for, and we're going to get it here on Friday night. If you're new to the channel, I am JY. This is my good friend Steve. We have covered this whole season. Steve doing the Big Ten, I'm doing the Mountain West, and we've done a lot of Pac-12 stuff, specifically the teams that are going to be going to the Big Ten, and also Oregon State and Washington State. Really covered them a lot here recently as well. But this video is going to be breaking down and previewing the championship game. So, Steve, I want to know your thoughts on the Ducks and the Huskies here. I am so excited we get to see them play again. Their first game was fantastic. I think this game will be just as good, if not better. So what are you thinking?
Yeah, I followed both of these teams very closely this year. They're going to be playing in the Big Ten next year, as we've talked about. I thought the first meeting between these teams was maybe the best game of the year. Just an absolute amazing game. The Washington passing game, lining up against that Oregon Ducks defense, their secondary, who I still think Oregon has maybe the best secondary in the country, or one of the best. In that game, Washington, Penix and Washington, they were able to prevail. They were able to hit some crazy passes, get some touchdowns. Penix was throwing dimes all over the place. It was a fantastic game. Since then, Washington has maybe struggled a little bit. Just hasn't won they've won all their games, maybe not as convincing as some fans and pundits would like to see.
Right.
Whereas on the other side, Oregon's just been absolutely killing people.
Yep.
Just scoring tons of points. Bo Nix has been awesome, and Bo Nix has actually kind of supplanted Penix as that Heisman Trophy frontrunner.
Yep.
First of all, I want to say for Bo Nix, I'm so happy for him. I think he got the complete shaft at Auburn. As a Penn State fan, I saw a couple years ago where he traveled with Auburn to Penn State. Very close game. I thought he played pretty solid in that game. But the Auburn fans, the SEC fans, Auburn fans, just absolutely ridiculous. Their expectations. They think they're going to beat Bama and win an Natty every year.
Right.
And that's just not what they are. So I really thought the Auburn fans and just kind of SEC fans were way unfair to Nix, and I really enjoyed seeing him thrive at Oregon.
Yep.
So I'm excited to see this matchup. And again, you could say the same thing with Penix. He was at Indiana. Good, solid quarterback at Indiana. But boy, has he exploded in DeBoer's offense and Washington, and he's had a Heisman Trophy season. Whether or not he wins or not, both of these guys have had Heisman Trophy type seasons. So I wanted to do a little bit of a deep dive. In our picks video, I picked Washington plus the points.
Yep.
But I wanted to look at this as far as just kind of looking at the numbers and how these teams match up. They played once. Washington won a close game at home. So I wanted to look at the numbers and see how they're going to match up on a neutral field.
Yeah.
So first of all, looking at, I used ESPN's FPI index as kind of their ratings, FPI ratings, as my kind of baseline, because it's based on math, basically. It's not based on the preconceived notions of fans and polls and all of that kind of stuff. So first of all, Washington's strength of schedule this year, 46, very high, pretty good.
Yeah.
Top 50. They played a good schedule.
Yep.
Oregon's strength of schedule, 62.
Okay.
So not too far behind. They have had a slightly easier schedule. So I think we can kind of take that. We can take that into account when we look at, Washington maybe has struggled a little bit more. Oregon has kind of cruised a little bit more, but very similar overall strength of schedule.
Yep.
So I wanted to look at their offensive efficiency ratings and their defensive efficiency ratings. So the efficiency is how well do you do against your opponents, against what you would expect it to be against your opponents. Because you can't, the teams are scheduled 4, 5, sometimes 6, 7, 8, 9 years in advance. So you can't control that in season. The players can't control that.
Right.
But what they can control is how they perform on the field against the people that they're playing. So we'll start with Washington. You and I have been high on their offense all year.
Yep.
I said repeatedly I thought they had the best offense in the country. So we look at their offensive efficiency rating, and they're ranked number 2 in the country out of about 130 teams. So not surprising at all.
I'm actually a little surprised by that.
I'm not surprised at all.
Given some of their I'll call them weaker games. There's reasons to that. I don't want to get into that.
Yeah.
But I'm surprised they're still at number 2 there. That's
and the reason, and again, so this is efficiency rating.
Yeah.
So against the teams they're playing, and they have a little harder schedule.
Right.
So I think it controls for some of that.
sure. Okay.
So yeah, number 2 in the country. Oregon, number 5 in the country.
Okay.
So right up there as well. They've just been killing people when you like to see really good teams. You find a way to win in the close games, and when you're playing the teams that you absolutely should beat, you crush them.
Yeah.
Okay. And Oregon has done a good job of doing that, especially lately since that Washington game.
Yep.
So really good tight matchup there. Washington number 2 in the country, offensive efficiency. Oregon number 5. Now let's look at the defense. There is a little bit of a difference here. So Washington number 32, and that's kind of what we said when we talked about the first game is. Washington, great offense. Could their defense hold up to Oregon?
Yeah.
Now it was a high scoring game.
Yeah.
30. They're number 32 overall. Pretty good, solid defense. Not bad. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that. 32. This one surprised me a little bit. I knew Oregon had a pretty good defense. I thought their defense was better than Washington.
Yeah.
They're ranked number 14 in the country in
Okay.
defensive efficiency. So top 15 in the country.
Yeah.
That's a kind of I would say, I mean, both teams were pretty darn good defense, but that's a significant jump up,
Yeah.
Their defense. And so let's look at their overall rating. So again, this is not based on polls. This is not based on the eye test or anything like that.
Yeah.
This is their efficiency rankings. How well did they do against their schedule, based on math, based on how the computer would predict them to do against their schedule. So Washington, number 11 overall in the country.
Okay.
Pretty good, but they're fighting to be one of those top 4 college football playoff teams.
Right.
And 11 has them out of the top 10.
Yeah.
Which, so to me, that was a little surprising. I thought we would see maybe 6 or 8 or something like that.
Yeah.
Oregon, number 2 overall.
Wow.
Which surprised me as well. Pleasantly surprised if you're a Ducks fan.
Right.
They've just been good. Like, they've just been really, really good. Maybe their offense isn't quite there with Washington, at number 2 in the country. I mean, it's hard.
Right.
They're number 5.
Yeah.
But their defense is significantly better as far as their efficiency ratings. And, that puts them right in there, which... they're the highest ranked one-loss team. The College Football Playoff Committee rankings came out, and they're ranked at number 5, just outside of that top 4.
Right.
Highest ranked one-loss team, and they have a chance to go this week and beat the one team that beat them. So really, when I was surprised when I saw this overall number 2, but when I think about it more, it really actually lines up. People criticize the playoff committee.
Yeah.
It lines up with where the playoff committee rankings, and both of us were surprised about the high spread.
Yeah.
7.5. I think you gave it as an early line when
Correct.
Oregon was 7.5 point favorites.
Yep.
Now they're 9.5 point favorites.
Yep.
And really that kind of goes with these numbers. Number 2 overall versus number 11 overall. So to me, I've said all year I trusted Penix a little bit more than Bo Nix.
Right.
Some of that comes to what happened at the end of the first game. Now, they were playing in Washington. That was a back and forth game. Both quarterbacks played great. Both quarterbacks got hit a little bit, but at the end of the game, Penix was able to make the plays to his receivers to win the game, and Bo had a chance to win at the end of the game, and he just was not able to make his plays. I think the last play of the game, he threw the ball in the dirt. Like, they needed a first down, and he dirts the ball, 5 feet in front of the receiver or something like that. So, I'm sure that was a little bit. I'm sure that was disappointing to Oregon fans. But since then, he's turned it up a notch. Oregon offense has turned it up a notch.
Yep.
They've really shown that they are one of. ESPN says they're number 2 in FPI efficiency. And when you look at their body of work, and I know, okay, we say head-to-head means a lot. It's like, why play the games if head-to-head doesn't matter?
Sure.
But that game, it was a tight game. It was a close game at Washington.
Yep.
And I think when you break down their schedule and you look at how they performed over the season, I do really think that the big picture wise, Oregon is the better team.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of making a U-turn of where I've been all year with Washington.
Yeah.
And I'm going to I picked Washington plus the points, but I'm going to say in this game, I think Oregon is just the better team. It's on a neutral field.
Yeah.
I don't think it's going to come down to two last drives between Penix and Bo Nix. I think it's more likely to be where Oregon has a 2-touchdown lead or 2-score lead, and Penix maybe has to try some heroics to bring them back, and most likely comes up just short because of that Oregon defense that's a little bit better.
Right.
Those plays where he was able to hit some ridiculous plays to the wide receivers in the first game. This time, when I think he's gonna need to do that coming from behind, and I don't think he's going to be able to get it done, unfortunately, for our Huskies fan.
Okay.
So I am picking Oregon to win this game by 1 score or less, where I think they will lead most of the game. I think it'll be pretty obvious they are the better team, because they are the better team. But I do think Penix will have a chance at the end for some heroics, and maybe he'll prove me wrong and hit 2 touchdown passes in the last 4 minutes, and it'll be awesome, and that'll be his Heisman Trophy winning moment. But the way I see it right now, I see Bo Nix and Oregon just being the better team and winning this game by about a touchdown.
Yeah, I mean, just a couple of things on that. So you mentioned the strength of schedule, about 16, not about, I think they were 16 apart, which really, to me, that's not a huge gap. Yeah, I mean, the Ducks have just been mind-blowingly good in the past really ever since that loss to Washington. And I look at the Ducks, and I followed the Ducks here, not closely, but I always like to bet on the Ducks for the past 4 or 5 years since we were able to do that here in Pennsylvania. Yes. And they would always, it seems like, until this year, they'd always have this high-scoring offense that would have at least 1 or 2 letdown games mid to late season, and then they just couldn't. That hasn't happened this year. So it clearly shows me that this Ducks team is a little bit different than past teams. They've had good teams for a long time, good offenses for a long time. This Ducks team seems to be a little bit different in a good way.
I think I know why. I'll wait till you're done.
In a good way. And so even the loss that they had to Washington, that was just a heck of a game. That wasn't like, the Ducks crapped the bed, they didn't show up. It wasn't anything like that. But you know me, I am a huge Odunze fan.
Yeah.
I know they have other receivers in Washington. I'm very well aware of that. But I love Odunze.
Yeah.
I think he is. I mean, we talk about Marvin. We've talked about Marvin Harrison Jr. before. I put Odunze right up there with him. He is so much fun to watch.
Yep.
Get him the ball, and he will make plays. To me, if there's one X factor, it's neither quarterback, because they're both outstanding quarterbacks. I think Odunze could be that guy that's that X factor, the Marvin Harrison type that Ohio State has, that the Huskies have, and that's not a knock on Oregon's receivers either. They have great receivers. Obviously, Bo Nix has to be thrown to somebody, and they have great receivers. The Ducks, I just find Odunze he just has that little something extra, that little something special.
He's amazing, yeah.
And I've just really enjoyed watching him, so I'm going to ride him a little bit. But I'm going to make my pick, and then I know you want to mention about why the Ducks maybe had some of these issues. So we did a picks video. I'll put the link up here if you want to hear our picks. But I said on that video, I have the Ducks winning this game 35-28. I could see it 35-31. Both probably right there in the low to mid 30s, but I'm picking 35-28 Ducks. That means they don't cover. So from a pick standpoint, I like taking the points with Washington. Yep. But from a money line, and if you're like, I don't care about point spreads, I just want to know who's going to win the game, I think the Ducks win this game. I agree with what you said. I think overall, from beginning to end, both sides of the ball, they just have more there than the Huskies by a smidgen. Not by a lot, just by a smidgen.
Yep.
And I just don't think they cover it. So anyway, that's where I'm at.
Yeah, I like all of your points. So you said that there's something different about the Ducks team this year.
Yeah.
So what I'll say, what I think it is, and it's Dan Lanning. Okay, This is his second year. He changed the culture in that program. They went from being a kind of a finesse team.
Yes.
Hey, we can score a lot of points and be flashy on TV.
Right.
To they've got lead in their gut. Okay. Yes. Did they have a couple slip ups last year? Yes. And one of them was also in the Washington game last year, if I remember correctly. There was a decision late in the game. Dan Lanning went aggressive. You know I like when coaches are aggressive.
Yes,
he went aggressive. He gave his players a chance to win, and they came up a little short. They didn't make the play. It happens. It's football. But you know what? When the coaches are aggressive and they teach physical, tough football to their players, and they give their players a chance to win it on the field, players respond to that. They become tough. They become resilient. And so when games are on the line, they have that kind of, they can dig down and find that. And I think that that's been the case this year. They're just tougher. Not only are they good and talented, very talented, but they're just tougher. They're when, again, they did lose that close game to Washington at Washington. There were some amazing plays made by Penix, but I think the team is just tougher. Bo Nix has kind of been a different guy. He was a bit fragile, I will say, in Auburn, because he didn't have that support. He didn't have that coach and the fan base behind him, believing in him. He has that now. The Ducks fans, the coaches there, everybody believes in him, and he's a different guy. But to me, Dan Lanning, to me, is maybe the best coach in the country right now. And and he's probably a guy that not too many people have heard of. But the way he's transformed this team, as a Penn State fan, I'm like, oh boy, this team's going to be a handful when they come into the conference next year. But I really do think he is the difference. And that's a big reason why I'm going with him. I think he believes in his players. He puts in his players in a position to win. And I think you will see the Ducks come out on fire, taking a lead. And I think we'll see something, again, where, we get down to the last 6, 7, 8 minutes of the game. The Ducks are up by multiple scores, maybe 14 points, 17 points, something like that. And where Washington, the people call it garbage time, but the game's still on the line. Washington will come back, make some plays, maybe to a Dunze, and make it close. But I could definitely see Oregon leading the entire game, even with a close points finish, under 10 points finish. So,
all right. Well, I'm going to wrap it up with this, Steve.
Okay.
I think this is going to be the last Pac-12 championship game ever to be seen. I don't see the Pac-12 continuing. Obviously there's a lot going on right now with Oregon State and Washington State, and whether or not they can or they can't. They're a Pac-2, and are they going to keep the name and all that jazz? If you're interested in that stuff, we have a ton of videos on our channel that we've gone over this from really back in August when things really got hot and heavy. We've been following the court cases. We had another one just come out. But I'm going to go on record right now and say this is the last Pac-12 championship game. It'll either be Ducks or Huskies riding off into the final sunset of the final Pac-12.
It's an end of an era. No matter what happens with the court cases, the end of an era.
So, hey, with that, we thank you for tuning in. We've got a lot of good stuff here on the mountain. If you want to see some other previews, we did a Big Ten preview. We did a Mountain West preview. We're going to be doing every bowl game. We'll get them out here in a couple weeks. We're going to do picks, I should say, on every bowl game. We'll get that out. A lot of stuff going on in college football right now. We're going to keep you on top of it. But we thank you for tuning in on the Big Mountain.